Chances are you've been here before. There's chaos in the oil and stock markets. New threats seem to be coming out of nowhere. Tensions are boiling from Asia to Europe. Adaptation is the key here to safeguarding your wealth, friends. You may not have considered gold before. It's not speculation, but insurance. And right now, we could all use some insurance. Noble Gold Investments have been protecting investors from disaster for years with precious metals. This might be the time for you to take a fresh look at gold and silver. Gold is a proven safe haven shield for your portfolio and a volatility balance against uncertainty. If it helps, Noble Gold Investments is offering a free 5-ounce America the Beautiful coin with its new IRAs this month. If you open your Noble Gold Investments IRA or 401k rollover, you can claim your coin today. Remember, crisis brews, portfolio waivers, gold insulates. Secure yourself against the threats. Go to noblegoldinvestments.com now. That's noblegoldinvestments.com, the gold company I trust.
Hey, Inspired Tribe, my fellow freedom lovers, John Nolan here. Thank you so much for tuning in to another Inspired live stream. We're healthy, we're wealthy, we're whole, we're free. That's the mantra of the Inspired live stream. Healthy, wealthy, whole, and free. Before we dive into the subject today, I want to welcome and invite everybody in. I don't care if you are... if you identify as a Republican, as a conservative, awakening, spiritual awakening, Christian, Q follower, or Anon, or, it doesn't matter. I want to invite everybody in because I ultimately really believe that we cannot grow, transcend, and really create beautiful change for ourselves and the world if we remain in echo chambers. So that's why I want to bring everybody in. The next thing I want to say is that there are certain things that have been dominating certain sections of the alternative media and the truth or truther movement, freedom movement, spiritual movement over the last years. And I wanted to bring a little bit of my perspective and clarity into it. I named this live stream, or called this live stream, Trust the Plan. Most of you know where this is coming from. This is coming straight out of the Q drops. Trust the plan. A lot has been said about it. Okay, so I will share with you what I experienced in the early 2000s from probably 9/11 onwards, oftentimes. For those who were really diving deep in that time, and I was one of those people, deeply on the truth journey, I was looking into obscure places, not just books. They were good books, but the internet was a very, very vastly different place than it is today. There were no video platforms as such. There was no social media as such. There were forums. There were chat rooms. There were websites. And it took about an hour to load a video of a certain size. But one thing that I remember vividly since the early 2000s, reading over and over again in chat rooms and in forums, was expect mass arrests. Mass arrests are going to happen. The military is stepping in and arresting people. There are indictments, and a huge wave of these is coming, and they're going to take over, and they're going to remove the corruption from Washington, D.C. Then very, very shortly after 9/11, in about, I think, 2002, it started with Nasara Jassara. So it was mainly Nasara, really, which was this, this supposed bill that was signed behind or that was voted on behind closed doors by Congress. And 9/11 was a cover-up event to never announce it publicly. But Nasara went into effect on about 638 weekends in the last 15, 20 years, as far as I remember. Usually around fall, it goes into effect all the time. And I'm being a little sarcastic here. I'm sorry about that. But I don't really want to be sarcastic. What I'm trying to do is paint a picture that for a lot of people who have entered the research, truth, freedom movement, alternative media movement, whatever you want to call it, to a lot of those people that have just come on board in the last years, all of this sounds fresh and new. All of these things sound like they're just happening now, and they've never been announced before, and it's a real shift happening. And I want to say that most of the things in terms of these announcements, these dates, these mass arrests, the indictments have been around for a very long time. And I remember having a conversation with David Icke about this off camera. And he said, I was in the early 90s. I believe it was the early 90s, mid 90s. He did his first tour in America where there were virtually no people. And at that time, he was probably that was G. Edward Griffin. And of course, Alex Jones was coming up in that era. So those were kind of the people that he was, I think, working with, touring with, and doing events with. And he said even back then, that was before the advent of the internet, really, those things were there. Same statements. And ultimately, the idea was trust the plan. There's something unfolding in the background. There are good people doing good things, and eventually they're going to tell you all about it, and they're going to remove all the evil and remove all the globalists and remove all the bad stuff. And I want to go on a record here and saying there are some really good people working behind the scenes, overtly and mostly covertly, and doing some really good things according to the way they can in their positions. That's a given. I know of some personally. That's why I know. And yes, they technically infiltrated the system to create positive change, even on some bigger scale. But, and here's the big but, the biggest problem I see, and hear me out, there is an agenda, a plan laid out. It's not a secret anymore. It's not a conspiracy anymore. It was 20 years ago. It was 15 years ago. It was 10 years ago. It's not anymore. There is an Agenda 2030. And even what's spelled out to the people, what's literally put into documents and put on the roadmap is horrific. It is horrific. The way of a completely controlled 15-minute city, transparent, Neuralink brain chip interface, transhumanist, you name it, it's all in there. And they are working towards that every day. They keep people in key government positions. They keep steamrolling this thing. And at the same time, you have a growing movement that is in the opposition. And a certain number of those people in the opposition are fully 100% invested in the trust the plan propaganda, which is there is a white hats group of which Trump is a part of, and a lot of people in the military are part of, and a lot of people in the public arena are part of, and they are they will save the day. And in the background, something completely different is happening. The reason why I can speak on that is because I've researched it all. I've researched all these groups. I've looked at all the drops, and I'm not saying there's nothing. I'm not saying there's nothing. There is something. And I do think to a certain extent it's even benevolent in their view. But here is what nobody is telling you. In that movement, we're still full throttle, going full throttle for digital currency, for complete digitization of every aspect of society. We're still going fully for 15-minute cities, for depopulation, for the new international health regulation amendments, and the new pandemic treaty coming in May 2024. All of these things are still unfolding. Wars are still being fought. People are still suffering. Prices are still going up. Poverty is rising and real. The depression, suicides, and sickness are going up like crazy. So I just want to say this is a real trajectory in the world. This benevolent group that's in the opposition, and I don't even want to call it the Q movement or the Trump movement or the MAGA movement, because it expands beyond it. It expands beyond the political spectrum. There's people that really do not have a lot of interest in the day-to-day politics that are invested in this narrative. Both ways, the 2030 agenda and the supposed trust the plan agenda, they are both steamrolling down the technocratic path. They are all fully invested in the present and the future of technocracy. What does that mean? Technocracy means that technology is at the center of everything and runs everything. That is the definition of a technocratic society. And technocrats also believe that highly specialized people, scientists, and highly specialized professors should be in charge of every aspect of society according to their expertise, rather than elected leaders and representatives of the people. This is technocracy. Technocracy today says technology, AI, is God, and will, and already does in many ways, dictate everything and will openly run society, and society, humanity, will be subject to AI and technology. Now, everybody, trust the plan or the globalists basically agree on that. I mean, different shades, they color the picture a little differently, but it's basically the same picture. They're just saying, oh, this is going to be a freer technocratic society, and this is going to be a full-on tyrannical technocratic society, but it's all technocracy. And so I think there's a battle going on between these two movements over who's going to run the show and how. And one side of this movement might say, okay, we're going to have like the Hunger Games society, we're going to have our little sectors here, and we're going to have areas of the world, and it's all going to be a central AI government. And the other side is saying, well, no, we're going to keep some sort of representative democracy. And we'd rather have America lead the charge, not China lead the charge. I think really that's what we might be looking here. Of course, I'll be the first one to come out and say, hey, I was completely wrong. It was a good idea to trust the plan. But do you don't remember this, but you might have studied this. There was a movement in the early 20th century, Operation Trust in Russia. Well, it had the same hallmarks of what we're seeing here. I'm not painting a black or white picture. What I'm asking is, what plan are you exactly trusting? Because as I see it, the goalpost keeps moving. And naturally, only humans have put dates on things. Only the followers put dates on things. But every week, there's a new interpretation of what is happening. In 2020, the election was supposed to be a significant thing, and it turned out completely different than people expected it to be. And then it was supposed to change, but it didn't. And then now we're going into 2024, and shit's still hitting the fan every day, friends. And I just don't see how trusting an invisible plan that there's only a cryptic understanding of it, and there's only people who are interpreting what they think they see. And ultimately, if this is what they say it is, we wouldn't be able to interpret shit. Because a real good military plan, what's baked into the plan is that you could never figure it out, especially as a non-military person, but even as a military person. The idea would be to make it impossible to read or interpret everything else, because if you can interpret it, guess who else can interpret it? Opponents. High-level military opponents, high-level intelligence opponents. If you can figure it out, they can figure it out. We're talking about highly sophisticated AI too. So let's acknowledge that. I think that the danger that we're running is that we're investing a lot of our hopes and our attention into a space holder that will ultimately go in the same direction as the thing that we do not want. It will just feel a little better. It'll just feel a little more patriotic. It'll just feel a little more positive, less dystopian, but it's ultimately the same path, and that is the technocratic path. And I think we are at this juncture. I've been saying this for the last couple of years. We're at this juncture where everyone has to make the decision whether they're going to step into their own true, beautiful, divinely created consciousness and power and see what we're actually capable of as divine spark, or we're going to put all our attention and everything into this technocratic dystopian future, because technocracy is dystopia. It must be, right? It's our baby is agreeing with me here, I think, meowing. Technocracy is dystopia, my friends. The message is, for me, there's only one plan I can trust, really, and that is the ultimately divine plan, the ultimately divine plan of the one creator that's above all the bullshit that we see and believe in. And that plan is something we have to tune ourselves to every single day and ultimately surrender to, which means is we have to step into our full power of who we were, why we were created, and how we express ourselves in that creation. I think that is it to me. And if we were to trust that plan, and if we were to exercise our free will, and if we were to believe in our divinely created spirit, in our spirit self, not this human ego self, then we would do what we can with what we have where we are. Do what we can with what we have where we are. And then do we really need to invest that much energy in a savior movement, a savior figure that we have simply very little control over or none at all? And do you really think, let's look at the last two elections in America, 2020, 2022 midterms. Who's excited about how this all played out? Who's excited about the people that are and were Speaker of the House? Who's excited about any real progress in any real area? Who's excited about anything really that's happening there? There's just covert hidden agendas that supposedly people are figuring out, and this guy that totally looks like a bad guy, acts like a bad guy, associates with bad people, is supposedly the good guy. And he's making bad decisions that has bad effects on all the people, but it's really a good thing. We're just only not seeing it yet. Yeah, cut me a break. Cut me a break. I don't operate like that. I see, of course, I see certain situations where infiltration is necessary. I understand all that, but give me a break. The world at large and our society is still basically racing down the wrong tracks. In societal ways. I'm not talking about individual expression. I'm not talking about some beautiful movements. I'm not talking about some beautiful expressions of consciousness that we see all over the world, but I'm talking about the general direction of society. There's still no nation on earth that is really turning the page here and going in a different direction. It's all still going according to their plan in the big societal ways. As I said, digital currency, digital health passports, greater travel restrictions, greater internet restrictions. The European Union has just implemented their new digital huge bill over the European Union, and people can't even watch Rumble in certain places because Rumble won't play ball, and other social media platforms. It's not that they have a harder time accessing it. It just won't play. We get emails and messages from France all the time. They can't watch our videos on Rumble because Rumble is not allowed in France anymore. Folks, if you think things are going in the right direction politically, economically, and socio-economically or socio-politically, they're not. They're absolutely not. And the next election will fix it. Well, that's been the promise since time immemorial. I don't think the next election is going to fix it. What I do think is the next election is going to be fixed, just like the previous ones. I do know there are good people all over the place. What I do know more than that is that it is the person in the mirror that can make the biggest difference in your life. The choices you make, the new decisions you make. There's a good time to make new decisions. The new year's coming up, and it's not necessary for a new year to arrive, for you to make new decisions, but it does help. We're kind of wired that way. So those new decisions, and whether you make them with a clear heart and with 100% conviction or not, will determine if we can really shift things around. And we do have to shift things around. See, I have children that will, I mean, they're young adults, but they will have children not too far from now, will be a grandfather. My whole outlook, my whole intention is to leave a much better world for them, a much better understanding, a much better way of life, a much better way of society, of community, of family than the one we have now. And I do not wish to put my power in some nebulous plan that nobody shared with me, by the way. Nobody put me on, CC'd me on their emails about that plan. And I wanted to invite everybody in because this affects everybody. And I see some beautiful people in all movements today, and intelligent, and people that really have the power to change things, to be inspiring to others. That's what I want to see, and that's what I want to emphasize more, and that's what hopefully we inspire in people, because this is where the real change does happen and will happen. Do what you can with what you have where you are, and keep expanding on that every day. That is it, in my view. So enough said, friends. Enough said. I'm getting off the soapbox here. Trust in you, because if you really believe that you were created, that your beautiful spirit was created by a divine creator, why wouldn't you trust in that? Why wouldn't you start believing in yourself? Why wouldn't you start creating the best possible life you can, become the best possible version of you? What could possibly hold you back if you knew all that? And then the rest will fall into place. Okay? All right, my friends. Much love, many blessings. We love you. We appreciate you. We'll be back with you again very, very soon.